talked about this last week. I think when most people think of a software company, sustainability doesn't leap to their mind. I mean, you just heard Jonathan talking about how software companies can scale. It's about users. It's about AWS credits. But it's important for sustainability to be part of every company now. So maybe start with like how you've experienced sustainability since you've been at Meta.
Absolutely. So although we have our big social technologies, Instagram and WhatsApp, and of course our big blue, Facebook.com.
Heard of it?
We also, yep. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but we also have consumer hardware. And that would be our immersive experiences, such as our Oculus products, which are virtual reality and augmented reality. So we have a mix, definitely, but as it relates to our integration into sustainability, we have various commitments that we're very focused on. That would be net zero and water positive, meeting and achieving those goals in 2030. We also are really committed and striving to have a responsible supply chain. So, like you mentioned, it has to be integrated, especially in a large company like Meta, and we're really trying to have an all-encompassing view into it and not just looking only at the climate side, but also on the social side as well.
Facebook's also known, Meta's also known for being a company that moves fast. A lot of sustainability work requires longer time horizons and planning for a longer future. I imagine there's got to be some discussions inside the company when you're like, I think we need to slow this down. How do you navigate those types of conversations?
Yes, so first I'll give you a little bit about my background and then kind of go into how to balance the move fast, but also continue to keep your teams motivated with these long stretch goals. So I was at HP for about 20 years before joining Meta in the last 7.5 years. I had the pleasure at HP of really working around the sustainability circle of topics, starting at conflict minerals and product end-of-life, reuse and recycling. I moved on into some environmental supply chain work, then focused a bit on ESG, and then ultimately moved into the social responsibility side of supply chain labor. Throughout that tenure, one thing that I really took away was that I wanted to learn these programs and on the ground and lead them directly, knowing that would set me up for success as a manager eventually, and which I did at HP and then now at Meta. So I share that journey a little bit because that has been such an important aspect for me in my career, being able to walk a day in the shoes of my team when they're struggling on timelines or really communicating how difficult it is to meet a certain deliverable. I can really identify with that based on having run those programs in the past. So that is one of the foundations I use. Now, as it relates to moving fast and balancing that with the slow progress, the longer timelines, I guess is a better way of saying it. You're absolutely right. I mean, most of these timelines, they have to be long, like our net zero goal in 2030. There's just different ways that I work to really motivate and inspire my team during those times. So first and foremost, taking into consideration my background of working in these different program areas, I find it so key for a team to be able to have those diverse opportunities in different program areas. So when somebody is working a long time in the responsible minerals program, conflict minerals, and wants to also dip their toes in our water stewardship program, let's look for an opportunity to give them that extended learning. The same for, I often think about how to promote program breaks, and that would be thinking about ways inside a program area to really stop work maybe for a bit and take a bit of a, a side program topic area and put that also on the plate, on the docket for the roadmap. An example of this would be we have, inside our responsible supply chain program, we have, there's a lot of work that just naturally has to go towards supplier code of conduct. And so you're looking at this quite often, and those could be really hard topics day in, day out. You're managing things around fair and safe working conditions. And the team quite often, they just need a break. So we got together and we thought, what is a project that we could do that's short term, the right size, but is really gonna bring a lot of happiness and joy? So we started a series called the Happiness Series, where we picked a supplier and we integrated in just a fun type of activity that was going to be only focused on joy. One of our first projects was building a library at the factory. We surveyed the workers to find out what are the type of books that they'd be interested in. A lot of the factories have families working there. What would the children like to read? The next year we looked into Friday ice cream trucks, just giving the workers a break with some ice cream and some music. And then recently we did boba and tea cakes. So that type of program break not only brought so much joy externally, but it also really brings a lot of joy and inspiration to the team. They get to step back and just work on something that's not as hard as that topic, and that continues to motivate them. These small, joyful, program wins almost can get them set up.
It's probably important to have those short-term wins, even if they're almost purely emotional,
yes,
so that they don't get bogged down in the fact that these are 10-year plans that they're pushing the rock up the hill every day.
Yes, exactly.
I'm curious too, I keep saying Facebook. Meta is also known for having an engineering mindset, and sometimes that works with sustainability and can be helpful. But sometimes I imagine you're probably building your team out of people that have different backgrounds, that are not all engineers. Like, how is that sort of culture of dealing with the engineering organization, but also having a more diverse and flexible sustainability department?
Yes, it's definitely something that you, I think, have to always balance to ultimately get to that, success of delivering and executing. We really try to think about how we can wear two hats at any point in time. As we're pushing sustainability goals, are we also thinking about the impact to the business? Because sometimes our sustainability, topic areas, they will push on the business, maybe in some areas to go a little bit slower, to cost a little bit more. Part of how you do this is, constant business justification, progress updates, and all those things that most of us are normally building in. But I try to really think about it in terms of, if you're putting yourself in the shoes of the business and really weighing those risks, then you'll be able to have a more complete end-to-end sustainability program area. Also, myself, in my leadership style, I really do try to practice as much emotional leadership elements as I can inside my team. That tends to bring, just from the very beginning, a deep level of trust and respect. I know one of the starting points is really just understanding your individual team's style and how they work, how they communicate, what are their, are they risk averse, what are their fears, how this all works. That tends to be something that leaders do at the beginning when you're onboarding an employee, but I think really the magic is when you're doing it throughout and you're understanding, 2 years into it, are you still in tune with what the program needs are, what that individual, how they're reacting to those program needs? I try to bring in also the human nature of, we need to leave space in our teams for when we have bad days. We can't completely just assume that our personal life doesn't flow into our professional life. So thinking about all those mechanisms, as well as, really keeping that business hat on at all moments in time, I think that really helps to bring it all together and deliver.
Yeah, I think it's funny to hear you say, you're at one point reaching down and understanding what your employees and your staffers are going through, and then reaching up and looking at it from the business perspective of what's necessary for the business, and you've got to sort of sit in between and balance those two goals. It's also, it occurs to me that this whole idea of a sustainability practice, you've been doing it for a while. In the hardware business, it's a little more understandable, but like, this is a relatively new practice for a lot of companies. There's not a lot of institutional history or knowledge. We are sort of working it out in real time, and particularly for Silicon Valley companies who, they didn't exist 40 years ago. This role didn't exist 40 years ago. So is there anything about the Silicon Valley experience and how you see sustainability being adopted in these tech companies that's different? HP also a tech company, but is there something that makes the tech companies different than Colgate?
Well, I would say we think a lot, tech companies in general tend to think a lot about structures, steps, processes, especially software companies that are building, all those different release cycles going in. So there is that gets factored in a bit, but sustainability experts and leads like all of you, we're just a different breed. So you can't manage a sustainability team exactly how you're managing a software engineering team or a sourcing team, for example, and that's okay. We are very human forward. At the end of the day, I think about my late husband used to say, Leslie, but your paycheck says Meta on it. But I really work for Mother Earth. Like, honestly, at the end of the day, that's where it comes from. So yes, of course, we're thinking about some of those different ways. My team really tries to lean into the idea of like, how can we promote operational excellence? And a lot of operational excellence skills and techniques that we're using is just building a really strong foundation with your program and doing that early on. That tends to be one of the most powerful things. I use the metaphor with the team of, we're gonna build a house and we need to have really good concrete, our foundation, low carbon concrete we should use, but we should have it. And we should have strong walls and structure. And think of that in terms of like, are we establishing policies and standards and our business processes? Are they really solid? We equate kind of all of that as our playbook. That alone, spending that time up front is so helpful when the escalation happens. And we're able to kind of push through it. All these techniques around also just building trust in your teams, you're doing that from the very beginning and constantly just fertilizing that throughout. That's another way of when you get into those hard moments, those escalation points, everything, of course, never goes super easy, but it could be a lot harder if you didn't have that structure and that foundation and you didn't have that trust.
Yeah. I think everybody in the room likes to think of themselves as working for Mother Earth, but I think you're doing it the right way by getting paid by Meta. I suspect Meta pays a little bit better than Mother Earth these days, plus options. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you all.